Welcome to the ASQ Innovation Technical Community WebEx presentation by Ms. Karen Hold, Experiencing Design, the Innovator's Journey. Ms. Hold is the founder and CEO of an innovation strategy consulting firm, Experience Labs. A Procter & Gamble trained brand marketer, Karen first saw how PNC drove revenue and profit growth through innovation. With over 34 years of experience, Karen is consulted for dozens of Fortune 500 companies, including AARP, AT&T, Alcatel-Lucent, Audi, Chick-fil-A, Cisco, John Hancock, Mercedes, Nokia, NEC, and Porsche. She is passionate about building creative capacities in individuals, organizations, and cities. Prior to forming Experience Labs, Karen was co-founder of Broadband Publishing, where she built sales through innovative marketing partnerships with Forbes and Business Week magazines. Karen recently published her first book, Experience Design, the Innovator's Journey by Columbia Business School Publishing. Karen is a graduate of Duke University and Georgetown's McDonough Graduate School of Business. She is the director of DTDC, a 5,100-member meetup group in Washington, D.C. She is a visiting executive lecturer at the University of Virginia Darden School of Business and a visiting professor at École des Ponts Business School in Paris, France, and Casablanca, Morocco. Please welcome Ms. Karen Hold. One fun fact for you tonight is that she has attended 4 Olympic sessions, and I'm going to now turn it over to her to her good luck story of the trajectory of Mr. Nathan Chen. Karen, all yours.
Thank you so much. Yes, I have been to 4 Olympics. The first one when I was 17, when I went to the 1980 Olympic Games in Lake Placid and was in the building when the U.S. beat Russia in that famous hockey game. And then I've been to 3 modern Olympics in the last 20 years to cheer on colleagues of mine. I so wish I could have been in China to cheer on Nathan Chen, who, as you probably know, was an Olympic gold medalist last week. But I've known Nathan since he was 8 years old, and I'm so proud of his achievements and accomplishments and excited to see him this summer when I return to Sun Valley, Idaho, where a lot of my skating friends are. Well, let me go ahead and share my screen because I'm so excited to share with you my work and the work that I have been working on with my colleagues and co-authors, Jean Litka and Jessica Eldridge. So Rhonda mentioned that I recently published a book, and in this book, Experiencing Design, the Innovator's Journey, we looked at design thinking and its impact, not from the perspective of customers who we use and those we use it for, but instead from the perspective of those who are users of design thinking. And if you're not familiar with the term design thinking is a set of problem-solving tools that are grounded in 3 principles. One is empathy, learning what the needs of our users are in order to create real value for them. Invention, meaning treat all of your problem solving as a hypothesis that can be tested. And then 3, the third principle is iteration and learning our way to success by placing small bets quickly rather than large bets slowly. But if you're not familiar with design thinking, you may be familiar with other problem-solving tools like Lean Startup or Six Sigma. And as with those toolkits, what we found is that in order to understand how to support people to do design well and how to make a truly transformational impact with design thinking, we needed to become someone new in the process. The question that really motivated us in writing this book was this question around what does it take to do design well? And we know that as we use problem-solving tools and as we use some of our innovation toolkits, we have seen a proliferation of activity, but we have worried about whether or not we're really going to achieve the transformational impact that we know design thinking and many of these tools are capable of delivering if we don't invest the energy and the resources to do it well. So what this book is really about is focusing on the developmental pathway of the users of design thinking in order to deepen understanding based on our research, to understand what the critical shifts in mindset and skill set are that need to happen in order for us to truly experience design in a way that it's meant to do. And regardless of whether you are familiar with design thinking, these are really leadership skills, and these mindsets and behaviors are really mindsets and behaviors that we can all learn in order to do innovation well. So let me just share a little bit about the work that we have done and how we got to this point. We've spent over the last decade tracking learners' journeys using diaries, leadership diagnostic instruments, and weekly check-ins to understand how non-designers learn and practice design thinking and innovation. And my colleague, Jean Litka, in 2010, launched one of the very first programs to teach design thinking at the MBA level. And to date, that course has taught over 600 MBA students and 3,000 executives the tools of design thinking. And then in 2013, Darden launched the Design Thinking for Innovation course on Coursera. And that course has reached over 350,000 people worldwide. In 2015, I kicked off a program here in Washington, D.C., in my hometown, called Summer of Design, which is an intensive 12-week experience working with D.C. area professionals to teach them the tools, and we have trained many people with those tools. And then finally, just 2 weeks ago, we launched a brand new initiative with our innovation partners, Treehouse Innovation in London, and that is the Innovation Mindsets Assessment, which is now available globally. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. So we captured our work in our new book, Experiencing Design, The Innovator's Journey. Now, what I want to do in our time together is give you our perspective on this transformation and then walk you quickly through its application to one particular phase of the design thinking process, which we call immersion. So at the simplest level, when we talk about design thinking and when you hear others talk about this toolkit of design thinking, they're talking about a set of discrete activities that may look familiar to you or you may be able to relate to even if you are not familiar with design thinking. And those activities include the following. It includes gathering data. You might call it research. and finding out about your users' needs and wants. And then identifying insights. Trying to make sense of the data that you've collected. Then you might establish design criteria. We might call these different things, but this is roughly the set of activities that we all do when we're doing design thinking. So establishing design criteria. And then generating ideas, brainstorming, coming up with solutions. Then we move into a phase called testing, where we begin to prototype those ideas and then experiment with those ideas to find out what has to be true in order for those ideas to be really good ideas. But here's the new news. Behind the scenes, these very seemingly simple activities are doing something that is producing profound changes in the innovators who use it. So for instance, we know that when we start out by gathering data and we're doing potentially interviews with customers, or we're doing observational research, a few interviews done superficially does not accomplish what this stage needs to accomplish, because what has to happen is an experience of immersion. And that has to be on the part of the user of design thinking, the person using these tools. And that immersion really sets the stage for the rest of our innovation journey. An immersion in users' lives shifts an innovator's frame of reference and engages their emotion. And it shifts from an egocentric, self-centered view of the world to an empathetic view of the world, understanding the needs of your users. It helps us to see and care about the new possibilities and paves the way for more effective collaboration throughout the rest of the innovation journey. Likewise, when we identify insights, gather data, the next stage that we're looking for are insights and patterns. It is that sense-making experience that allows innovators to transform lots of data into new knowledge. And without that, you cannot build the emotional commitment and the enthusiasm for ideas. As we move forward to begin to specify the criteria of what our solutions should contain, we start to see a bridge in terms of relationships between individuals gathering data and working on insights and the group of stakeholders coming together and aligning on what really matters for the future solution. This alignment then allows teams to generate ideas collaboratively because it offers an experience of emergence. And creating the condition for the emergence of ideas is critical to getting good ideas. It is this emergence that particularly illustrates the difference between the activity of brainstorming and creating the conditions for the true emergence of higher order solutions that leverages the diversity of a team. Likewise, as we move into prototyping, prototyping triggers this experience of imagining as innovators learn how to make ideas feel real, and they shift from abstract, talk-only, word-only ideas to something that is concrete and visual. Then finally, this last phase of experimentation is when we get into the designing and conducting of experiments, and that leads to learning in action. This is the tough journey of moving from being a knower to being a learner and becoming more resilient and becoming more adaptive. So the entire experience drives this personal transformation that unlocks the power of innovation. So I'd like to go a bit deeper into this stage that we call immersion, which is really about immersing ourselves into the worlds of the people we're serving to better understand what their needs are. And I want to do that to give you a sense of what we're talking about here. In the book, we have a very formulaic approach to the way we introduce all of these phases, which provides some wayfinding. And you'll see that structure as I lay it out here. So what do innovators do when they're doing immersion? Well, they're doing things like conducting research, like I said, preparing conversation guides to conduct interviews with. It might be mirroring or shadowing users. They might be preparing diaries or photo collages to better understand the worlds of the people that they're serving. They might be creating journey maps, if you've ever heard about journey maps. All of these activities that we do during research are probably pretty familiar to you if you're in the innovation world. But what makes immersion more than just ethnography? What is the difference between gathering data, the doing, and becoming more empathetic and curious, which is the becoming? Well, what's really happening behind the scenes is a mindset shift. We're moving from an egocentric bias to an empathetic one. We are learning awareness of our own biases and that we need to challenge those and challenge the accuracy of our own perspective. We're moving from being detached and distant from the problems of the people we're involved with to being curious and personally engaged. We're moving from a mindset of impatience to solve the problem to a willingness to sit in the problem and understand the current reality in order to develop better solutions. It is moving from learning not to accept the obvious and conventional definition of a problem, but to treat every problem as a hypothesis itself. So these mindset shifts work for a variety of reasons that we can look to scientific literature to help us understand. This first one, mirror neurons, we know are the biological basis of empathy, and it is the development of empathy that allows us to short-circuit the fear that often allows us to engage with others. And we know that cultivating curiosity is not just a phenomenon that we talk about as something interesting and something that is something that we should do, but it's also something that triggers a whole set of learning pathways and is really important to the reduction of anxiety that allows us to think more creatively. At the same time, science says that we have a very real set of persistent cognitive biases that will get in the way if we don't develop new ways of looking at problems. What we observe is that these mindset shifts that occur in immersion and all of the phases that we outline in the book come accompanied by a set of behavioral shifts. Now, these behaviors are the competencies that we think about that we need to develop in ourselves or in the people that we are leading through innovation work to help them be skilled in innovation. And we've decided to call these minimum viable competencies, which is a play on minimum viable product. So why MVCs? Well, some of our research suggests that as we gain competencies, we are able to move in thresholds. So what matters is moving from a beginner to an intermediate level, and then an intermediate to an expert. Interestingly, in our research, we discovered that if we can achieve this intermediate level of competency, we can reap most of the benefits for creativity and innovation that these tools have to offer us. So these MVCs are really the markers that we need to look to because they are the behavioral indicators of shifted mindsets. You know, we can't see that a mindset has shifted. We can't wake up in the morning and say, oh, I have a new mindset. But we can look to these behaviors as markers that we are trying on new behaviors, and they are a marker for a shifted mindset. So for instance, we begin to talk about a competency of listening and the ability to hear others' perspectives, not through the filters of our own biases. We talk about the ability to ask good questions and to be able to stay fully present to the lived experiences of those we're designing for. We think of the skill set of continuing to look for opportunities rather than jumping to solutions. And for those of us doing innovation work, that's probably one of the hardest skills to develop, because as innovators, we like to identify as problem solvers and we want to rush straight to solving, which is really lousy for the people we're serving because we haven't spent the time to be good listeners and to understand what their needs are, which might be completely different from our own. So these mindsets and skill sets are very closely related, but the skill sets are the behaviors that we can both observe and provide feedback to others on. Okay, so we know that we want to have these new skill sets and these new behaviors, but what makes this so hard? And in this particular case, what makes immersion so hard? Well, we know that stepping into the unknown when we're doing innovation work is very intimidating for most people. In fact, 75% of the people that we engage with in innovation work say that having to deal with the ambiguity around innovation feels very scratchy and feels very uncomfortable. Stepping into that unknown is very intimidating for 75% of most professionals. Then beginning a new project when someone has no idea what the question really is hard to encourage people to do. Another thing is that most of us have been trained to listen to judge rather than to understand. So teaching people to back away from judgment and be open to possibility is a real challenge. Now, it sounds silly to say that most of us are not fully present, but we are not. I gave a workshop today for a group of people from Naval X, and we did this exercise where we could listen for feelings and for emotions. And as they were doing this exercise and they were having to listen for facts, some of the people found this very boring to listen just for facts. They were very highly sensitive and empathetic people, and because of that tendency and because of that leaning, their minds started to wander and they were not able to be present. And so figuring out how to be fully present and to engage in active listening turns out to be really hard to do. And we also listen for solutions that are already in our own head, right? When our mind begins to wander, we tend to drift back to the things we already know and the solutions that we already have in our own head. Another really important thing to think about that's just really hard to do is that in the business world, we have been taught that the only real data is quantitative data, and that the purpose of data gathering is proof rather than inspiration. And what we are saying is that in immersion, we now are asking you to realize that qualitative data is just as real as quantitative data, and we're using data to inspire us to create ideas and not prove old ones. A quick story, I was working on the Folgers coffee brand in the early 90s, this will date me, in the early 90s when Folgers was the biggest coffee brand in America. And Starbucks was a regional business in the Pacific Northwest, and they were a $165 million brand. Folgers was close to $1 billion brand. And the junior members of our brand team thought that there was something to this Starbucks experience that we should be paying attention to. And so we couldn't get the attention of our senior executives, but we sent them off to Seattle, which is where the center of the Starbucks experience at the time in the early 90s. And they came back to Cincinnati, which is where our headquarters were, and decided not to do anything. And the reason is that we relied on Nielsen syndicated data. Quantitative data, Nielsen syndicated quantitative data. Now, Nielsen data measured club stores, grocery stores, mass merch, and convenience stores, which were not the channels that Starbucks was being sold through. So as far as we could see, Starbucks didn't exist. So we didn't respond. Now, mind you, we had the best product from the best beans because we had the primary relationship with the farmers in South America. Starbucks had to buy our picked over beans and Maxwell House's picked over beans at the port. And so they were taking an inferior bean and creating a new experience for the user. And users voted with their pocketbooks, and they took that inferior bean and voted with their dollars. And fast forward 40 years, 30, 40 years, whatever it is, they have a $24 billion business, and Folgers has a $2 billion business. It generates 12 times the economic impact that Folgers does. And we had an opportunity to enter the market and enter the Starbucks market experience, but we relied on quantitative data that we thought was correct, and we didn't evaluate any qualitative data to try and understand what the experience was that users were having and why that might have been something that we wanted to offer potential consumers. So it is our own background and our own expertise that can often interfere with seeing something from someone else's perspective. And that's the tyranny of our own expertise, is that we have been trained to see the world in a particular way. Well, why does this matter so much, and why does immersion matter so much? Well, immersion may be hard, but we really have no choice but to succeed at all. If we fail at creating experiences for innovators in the immersion phase, we fail to set the stage for all the other subsequent phases of innovation. Immersion into the lives of your users and your customers is where we learn to listen for alternative views. It's where we begin a shift to a hypothesis-driven mentality, and it's where we recognize the complexity of the human experience and come to terms with the notion that there is probably not one right answer, that there are probably multiple answers that we have to discover through a process of experimentation. Finally, immersion holds innovators in the questions longer than might be comfortable and gives us the opportunity to reframe the question into a more powerful one that's more likely to lead to a more powerful solution. So, how do we better guide people to support their own shift? Well, staying in the problem and focusing on being fully present to the needs of your users is a good start. Trying to convince people of letting go, of getting it right, to join a process of learning is important. We also have found that bringing structure and forethought to data gathering and project management really reduces the anxiety around innovation and helps people more fully engage, which is why design thinking and a toolkit, whether it's Lean Startup or whatever toolkit you're using for innovation, is so helpful because it provides that structure to help people navigate through ambiguity. And then we push people deeper because we also know that superficial insights lead to superficial solutions. Finally, slowing down to move faster creates a successful experience of immersion. So, in the book, we walk through this same structure for all the other phases. We walk through the science, what makes it so hard, why it matters, and how we can be more effective in guiding our own teams. And we don't have enough time to do that tonight and to do a deep dive into every phase here, but we cover how to make a transformational impact in innovation at every stage in that book. Now, the good news, bad news is that our research also shows that it's more complicated than a single experience for every innovator. Over the past several years, we've been tracking our students' comfort as they move through innovation. And on the right-hand side, you can see on that vertical axis, you can see their comfort level that our students report to us as they move through doing innovation work. And on the left-hand vertical side, you can see a group of personas that we created based on personality assessments using an instrument called the DISC assessment to categorize personality preferences. So let's look at each one. So the influencers that you can see at the top, these are classic people's people. Drivers are traditionally more dominant, very data-driven, less people-driven. Analysts, analysts are extremely data-driven, very uncomfortable with ambiguity, and tend to have perfectionist tendencies. And then supporters are the team players. And we tracked each of these different personality profiles over time, and you can see here quite different comfort levels. For instance, people who are super team players are especially uncomfortable at the beginning of innovation work, but really begin to enjoy this kind of work when they move into the more collaborative activities like alignment, which you might expect. Because often they're the peacemakers, and you can see there's quite a big gap in comfort, and so the supporters often feel like they're the peacemakers trying to ensure everyone stays engaged and everyone's happy as they move through an innovation project. Influencers love innovation from day one. We all know these people. These are usually the people that get invited to do innovation work. And the rest of us don't get that same invitation because we find it to be uncomfortable. And that's really why we wrote this book. We didn't write this book for the influencers of the world who find a lot of success doing innovation. We really wrote it for everyone else because they're very uncomfortable, and we wanted to articulate the places where we thought that they would feel uncomfortable and let them know it's okay, and also provide the encouragement and the scaffolding and the support so that they don't jump out of the innovation bus, because their input and their diversity and their expertise is so needed. And if they are not invited to the innovation party, then our solutions will suffer because of that. And the drivers and analysts who are data-driven people really struggle with the ambiguity and the human-centeredness, quite frankly, on the front part of the innovation process. But as they begin to see the quality of the ideas that emerge and the tangibility of prototyping, they get very, very excited. So our research suggests that the journey looks very different for each of these different personality types. So what do we do with all of this information? Well, I mentioned earlier that we've just launched an innovation mindsets assessment. And at the individual level, we believe there's a tremendous opportunity to be much more strategic and systematic about individual competencies as they relate to innovation. So you see here the Innovation Mindsets tool on the left and the corresponding report that we've developed that helps look at the capability development at each stage of the innovation journey. And we begin by asking people to self-assess the extent to which their own behaviors reflect these capabilities. And then we believe that if we want to help innovators have these deep experiences at every phase in the innovation journey, we have to give them self-awareness of where they are today, and then help them tailor a development plan that focuses on the particular capabilities that they need to develop. Hence the name of the second half of the name of our book, The Innovator's Journey. We recognize that this is not a one and done, read a book, you're an innovator. This is a journey of innovation and a journey of learning. We're also developing a 360 instrument that will provide additional non-self-reported, peer-reported feedback from team members that's in development right now. And this is particularly helpful as projects unfold to see how individual innovators are moving from a starting point to a desired state. Then, if we try and link these capabilities at an individual level with the organizational capabilities for innovation and change, we think bringing definition to what these capabilities are and creating structured systems that allow us to create a development plan and chart our progress is very exciting. And our hope is that this will take this fuzzy black box of design thinking and translate it into something tactical that we can work with. So at the organizational level, we really believe that the opportunity is for leaders like you to understand the kind of support that you need to offer, whether it's infrastructure support, resource support, or cultural support at each stage of the innovation journey. So for instance, in data gathering stages, we know that in many organizations, talking about emotions is taboo. But unless we understand the emotions and feelings and needs of the particular people that we are serving, we cannot create real value for them. And so creating safety in our individual organizations to talk about emotions is an important activity that leaders can do. We're much more comfortable talking about facts, and it is those emotions will help, understanding those emotions that will really help us create value. As we move into sense making and alignment, we need to encourage people to be hypothesis driven. Otherwise, we are at risk of setting up our employees to take big bets, place big bets slowly, which we often know do not result in success, instead of small bets quickly. As we move into generating ideas, we have to push back on early compromises. We have to allow our teams to stay in the possibility space so that they can get to higher order solutions. In prototyping and imagining, we need to pay attention to this transition of moving from abstract to concrete, and to get our people and our teams to translate their ideas into something visual and concrete that is shareable. And then we can't let them live too long in the theory. Finally, when we move into experimentation, we think there's a really tremendous opportunity to play in insisting on the role of experiments in our organizations. Experimentation is probably the least used of all the innovation tools, but the most important tool for de-risking innovation. And we think a focus on cultivating the skills of designing and executing experimentation is a really important role that leaders can play. So let me stop there. I will close by saying that our goal in writing this book was to deepen our understanding of how to do design well, how to do innovation well, and to help all of us as developers of people to understand the important work that has to happen at each stage of the innovation journey. We know that there's more work to be done, but we hope that this work of ours is an important contribution to the body of knowledge on innovation, and it will help us take the conversation to the next level. We believe that this is really critical if we are to create new solutions that create real value for people and transform people's lives. So with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen, and we have some time for questions.
Thank you so much, Karen. That was a phenomenal, holistic view as to the life cycle of practitioners, the life cycle of your research, the impact and value that you're bringing to organizations, and really helps them assess. They can scorecard, they can put in place a plan of action, and they can create, harnessing the competency map, really grow and sustain an innovative workforce going forward. So thank you so much. We are now going to open it up to questions from our audience. Let's see, our first question is from Mr. Nicholas White. In experiencing design, do you think about the law of diffusion of innovation? It seems like you get late adopters from the design thinking aspect.
So Nicholas, tell me more about the law of diffusion. That is a term that I am not familiar with, so I would love to hear more about that.
Well, as we're waiting for Nicholas to respond to that, we have another question come in. Do you think this method is more important for radical innovators or incremental innovations?
Gosh, what a great question. So I believe that in order to do innovation well, you need a portfolio of all kinds of innovation. You need to have a portfolio of options that can create radical change. But the majority of innovation is, I'd say about 70% of your innovation is going to be incremental innovation. And there is no shame in incremental innovation. And incremental innovation is a place where everyone in the organization can participate and be a part of the process of change and positive impact. Not all innovation has to be radical innovation. And the mindsets and the skill sets that are required for incremental innovation are the same mindsets and skill sets that are required for radical innovation. So I would hope that organizations and individuals would normalize incremental innovation as a positive for their organization and a positive for themselves.
Thank you so much, Karen. So Nicholas has responded. The law of diffusion of innovation is exemplified when any company is planning on bringing a new innovative solution to market. They must accept the fact that not every customer will be willing to buy it immediately. There will always be certain target customers who are more resistant to trying out new ideas than others, i.e. going back to his comment about it seems like you get late adopters from the design thinking aspect.
Late adopters from the design thinking aspect. I'm not so sure I agree with that, but I would say that design thinking helps you, and all innovation helps you be much more precise about creating value for all of your customers. I think when you understand your customers only as data points and you don't leverage the difference in those customers, then you create products that only appeal to a certain audience and they really don't appeal to everyone. And I think there's so much promise in understanding and leveraging the difference in customers' needs and being much more precise about how you can create value for individual needs.
Thank you, Karen. I think he has also a follow-up question. You have quite the fam here. So he says, one, how can they get a copy of your presentation?
Oh, well, I am happy to provide a copy to Rhonda. And she can send it out.
Bless you. Thank you. Yes, we're happy to do that, and it will be on the ASQ Innovation Technical Community My ASQ as a discussion as well, and posted up to YouTube as soon as I can follow our proper process. Thank you, Karen. Another support from Nicholas is he's asking, what's the possible collaboration in this area?
Rhonda, your volume kicked out for a minute, so I didn't hear the first part of that question.
He said he was asking you what's in the realm of possible for opportunity for future collaboration.
Future collaboration with who? With me?
With you, yes. I would think with you. I'm not quite sure if that means from an authoring standpoint or doing a project together. Nicholas, can you elaborate?
Nicholas, we shall chat. Rhonda has my contact information, and we should definitely chat.
Okay, there we go. Okay, let's see. Yes, okay, Nicholas says he would love to. Ron Kelly, Mr. Ron Kelly is asking, do you have a YouTube channel or a podcast that you run so that they could get more information and your expertise?
Oh, thank you, Ron. I do not have a YouTube channel or a podcast, but stay tuned. I might. I have been filming, or I've been recording a lot of podcasts in 2022, so I think I've done 6 or 7 so far this year, and I just posted one to my LinkedIn page yesterday. If you Google Innovation Day podcast with Neil Follett, Neilfollet, you'll see a link to that online. But I have another 4 or 5 coming up in the next couple weeks. So I am on podcast, but I'm also considering doing one of my own, and I'm also beginning to film some content as well. We do have a Coursera course, though, Ron, there, and for everyone listening, Jean and Jessica and I just filmed a Coursera course, which is a free course, which is online at Coursera, Experiencing Design, the Innovator's Journey, and that's free to anyone on Coursera.
Thank you so much, Karen. Let's see what other questions come in. Okay, so let's see. Here's from Miss Jane Keithley on our ASQ Board of Directors. What quality skills do you see as most helpful for innovation?
Well, I think for me, the most important skills that I think about are these mindset shifts and the behavior shifts that I have been talking about. And I think, you know, the most important thing that we can do is begin to shift our mindset around all of these, around each of these different phases. So, for instance, in immersion, thinking about how we can move from being egocentric to being empathetic. I teach a lot of students, and this is one of the trickiest skills for most of my students to understand and to accept. But until we can get beyond our own view of the world and the biases, in the book we document 10 biases that are really important to think about, until we can get past ourselves and move from a world where we view the world from our own perspective to a world where we can be empathetic about the people we're serving, we can't create real value for them. So I think the shift from egocentric to empathetic is really important. I think likewise in sense making, when we're trying to make sense of all of the data when we're doing research, getting comfortable with ambiguity is a really important skill that we need to have. So many of us feel so uncomfortable in the ambiguity of innovation that, you know, we jump to solutions, which I said earlier, I mentioned this earlier, is really lousy for the people that we're serving. I often think of like a hoarder's house when you think about collecting data, right? You've got all this data and you know there's a gem in there somewhere, but you can't stand getting through all the other stuff in the hoarder's house, in that room, to get to that gem. But that's what we need to do, is get comfortable with that ambiguity if we're really going to serve the people that we are trying to serve and create real value for them. So I think that's important to do when we're thinking about the sense making. And then, gosh, in alignment, I think one of the most important things we can do is welcome diverse perspectives and to shake up our own entourage. So often we surround ourselves with like-minded people, and when you surround yourself with like-minded people, you hear the same things, and you don't shake up your, if you don't shake up your entourage, then you're not going to be able to invite that diversity of perspective that we know is important to having a higher order understanding of the problems that we're trying to solve. And then as we're thinking about emergence, I think getting confident in our own ability to contribute is really important. Working from a position of possibility rather than a position of constraints is extremely important. For those of us who find it very difficult to imagine new ideas because we're always thinking about the constraints and the things that could go wrong. I like to think of ideas as like little green shoots, and they need protection, and they need sunlight, and they need the ability to grow, because ideas when they're little are usually nothing spectacular. It's only the ideas when they've been combined with other ideas and allowed to mature and develop that they become something important and something valuable. But you have to be intentional about protecting that and saying yes and to ideas instead of no because, and that's something that's really important. And then making things visual and concrete and moving away from being abstract, that's critical. And then finally, in learning and action, I think one of the most important things that we can do is treat everything as a hypothesis and have a portfolio of options. So when our assumptions are not validated about our ideas, we have ideas to go back on. You know, the most successful venture capitalists in Silicon Valley, for every 10 investments that they make, only 1.8 are successful. So you have to have a portfolio in order to be successful.
Thank you so much, Karen, for that. I think we have a couple more if you're open.
Yeah.
So in your research and in your work to date, for you personally, what was the biggest aha moment for you and your team as you were moving to the creation of your book content?
Well, I think the biggest aha was probably discovering this journey for different innovators. For me, I had this is what used to keep me up at night. Actually, it's one of the central reasons that I wrote the book. But then to find statistical significance in the research that we ran to validate what I had been seeing on a day-to-day basis was very exciting and really thrilling for me as a researcher working on this project. You know, I use journaling as a way to keep a pulse on the teams that I work with so that I can meet people where they are. Because I know from my own experience that I could be working with an innovator who has a 10 out of 10 week, and a different innovator on the same team who's gone through the same activity and has had the same exposure is having a 3 out of 10 week. And it was those people who were having the 3 out of 10 week that really pulled at my heartstrings, because I often found them frustrated or discouraged, and worst of all, thinking that they weren't creative. And I know and believe everyone is creative, and if we create a safe space to allow everyone to bring what Heidegger calls their withheld, then we create the conditions for that psychological safety, then everyone can contribute. And so I really needed to find a way to document that experience that people were having and let them know that it was expected and it was okay. And so to have the statistical significance in our research to show that was really thrilling.
Thank you. So I love it, right? So your discovery, your expansion, your intertwining, right? And then being able to create the opportunity from that space, both for practitioners and the adopting organizations. Thank you so much. We have another question. We have a gentleman, Andrew Higgins, who would like to know if you've ever read the book Quality by Design from Joseph Juran. And if you have, what did you find inspiring about it?
No, but I am an avid reader, so I will add that to my list. Quality by Design. No, I've never read that.
Thank you. Okay, one last. Since you have attendees tonight, what is the one what challenge would you offer us as leaders and practitioners for us to take back to our innovation communities and organizations now that we've heard your phenomenal discussion with us tonight?
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I would say 3 things, right? To focus on how can I be a more empathetic leader? How can I create the conditions for active listening within my organization? I'll tell another quick story. One of my personal heroes is Leroy Grumman, who founded Grumman Aerospace, now a part of Northrop Grumman. And Grumman set productivity records during World War II when they had a mostly female workforce because their husbands, the women's husbands, were all fighting the war, fighting World War II. And so they were unskilled, most of them had never held jobs before. Most of them were mothers and had children at home. And yet Grumman was still able to set these productivity records. And one of the reasons that they did was because Leroy led with empathetic leadership. What he did was he used to walk the shop floor and listen to the needs of his people. And he created such concern for the well-being of his employees by doing things like creating childcare and daycare within the plant, which was unheard of in the 30s during the war, right? So he instituted daycares. He created a diaper delivery service, which didn't exist at the time, right? This is pre-disposable diaper days, and child rearing in the 30s, God bless our grandparents, was a dirty activity and a time-consuming activity. So if you have a full-time job, it was a lot to manage, especially when you're the only parent at home. So he created this diaper delivery service, and he created this little green truck that if you left your stove on or your car had a flat tire, would be dispatched to you and would be able to help you in that situation. All those small little acts of listening and empathy for his employees added up and had this multiplicative effect on the organization, to the point where with unskilled laborers, they were able to set productivity records during the war. It's really mind-boggling to me. And another quick one. I know, we're at 8 o'clock. Rhonda, I'll stop. But so leading with empathy, I think it's one of the most important things you can do. Treating everything as a hypothesis and learning your way to success by testing your way to success, placing small bets quickly rather than large bets slowly.
I love it. Thank you so much, Karen Holt. We are so grateful for your discussion with us tonight, the challenge, the highlighting of leadership, and we're so grateful for you being able to share your slide deck and your resources with our members and our community writ large. Again,
thank you.
Big round of applause, and thank you to Ms. Karen Holt.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. For our members, our next session will be held Thursday, March 24th, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern. We invite you to join Mr. Jesse Fuel with how to measure and visualize your culture transformation. Again, a big round of applause to Karen Holt. We're going to stop the recording. We will send out our